All Souls Unitarian Universalist Church, building community, inspiring growth, creating change. Here in the heart of Kansas City, we come together to create this hour of shared reflection so that we might be renewed in courage for these times and inspired to lives of greater dignity, higher purpose, deeper generosity, and more effective action. If you are new to Unitarian Universalism or to our congregation, we want to get to know you and share part of your journey. If this place is already your spiritual home, welcome once more. We need one another, and it is good to be together again. Because we care for one another's safety, our congregation is gathering online during this long season of coronavirus pandemic. Nevertheless, through the gifts of technology, we continue to celebrate community and connections as we lean into the values of justice, compassion, and reason. Together, we learn the love that has the power to overcome both loneliness in the heart and oppression in the world. Welcome to our service this morning. May the words and music and images that we offer today nourish our best selves, calling forth abundant wisdom and love.
Arise, O souls,
Good morning, and welcome to this online gathering of the All Souls Covenant Community of Memory and Promise on this 24th day of January 2021. We come together here in this cautious mode to protect one another, but still to weave, even in this time of pandemic tribulation, the web of mutuality that sustains us all, and to make meaning of the challenges and rejoicing of our days. Today, many among us lift up thanksgiving for the resurgence of democracy, for the peaceful transition of federal power that we have experienced this week, and for the end of a difficult and divisive era in our national politics. May this also be a moment when we rededicate ourselves to the disciplines of responsible citizenship, to high standards for truth and integrity, to creating together a society of justice and compassion, and to holding our leaders in ample support as well as watchful accountability. Those who would dismantle all forms of privilege and oppression, who would mend the wounds of history and renew the unfulfilled promise of freedom, must learn to begin with ourselves, first within our own minds and hearts, and in the places nearest to us, our own families, communities, friendships, neighborhoods, to seek understanding and right relationship. If we, the people, are to be the governing force of this nation, then we must seek for ourselves the same wisdom, humility, and reverence that we would hope to find in the leaders called from among us. We light our chalice flames this morning in honor of all who give themselves to the service of the common good in functions large and small, so that we might all live and thrive together in equity, interdependence, and peace. Let us take a moment now to write in the chat where our many flames are kindled. and then speak the words of our covenant and sing together of the voyage that we share.
Standing on these mountains and plains, far away from the rolling ocean, still my dry land heart can say, I've been sailing all my life now, never harbor or port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home. Sun, my sail, and moon, my rudder, as I ply the starry sea, leaning over the edge in wonder, casting questions into the deep, drifting here with my ship's companions, all we kindred pilgrim souls, making our way by the lights of the heavens in our beautiful blue boat home. I give thanks to the waves upholding me, hail the great winds urging me on, greet the infinite sea before me, sing the sky my sailor's song. I was born upon the fathoms, never harbor or port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home.
Now let's join together in speaking once again our covenant promises to this community. Together we affirm, Goodwill is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
Good morning. I want to welcome all of you children who are joining us this morning. I want to share a special story with you, and I want to share a special celebration with you. I hope you'll join me in celebrating Kamala Harris as the first female, the first Black American, and the first Asian American to be elected Vice President of the United States. This is an historic moment in our nation. Are you as excited as I am? Are you as inspired by Kamala as I am? Throughout her life, Kamala has worked for equality, liberty, and justice for all Americans. And those are values that we, as Unitarian Universalists, share with her. Kamala aspires to be a role model and an inspiration to all of you children, as well as to us adults. When Kamala was a little girl, her mother said to her, "Kamala, you may be the first to do many things. Be sure not to be the last." And when Kamala was talking about being sworn in as vice president, she said, "I'll be thinking about all the girls and boys whose parents say to them, 'You can do anything.'" Did you know that Kamala has written a children's book titled "Superheroes Are Everywhere"? Kamala believes that each of you has the qualities of a superhero inside yourself. I want to share another inspiring story with you this morning. This story is about a little girl named Mae Jemison who grew up to be the first Black female astronaut in space. In 1992, Mae spent more than a week orbiting the Earth in the Space Shuttle Endeavour. I hope Kamala's story and Mae's story inspire you children to know that if you dream it, if you believe in it and you work hard for it, anything is possible. You can be a superhero, and you can be anything you want to be when you grow up. Our story is titled "Mae Among the Stars," written by Rhoda Ahmed and illustrated by Stasia Burrington. Little Mae was a dreamer. They say that daydreamers never succeed, but little Mae was different. One day, Mae was working on an assignment for school about what she wanted to be when she grew up. "What will you tell them, Mae?" "I'll tell them I want to see Earth." "This is Earth, Mae," her mother said. "The flowers, the grass, the forest, and the mountains. We live on Earth." "I know, but I want to see Earth from out there." "That's an amazing plan, little Mae. Then you have to become an astronaut. That way you can see Earth from space." "Astronaut? Do you think I can do that?" "Of course you can. If you can dream it, if you believe it and work hard for it, anything is possible." Mae asked her mom to take her to the library. She searched for books about space and astronauts. After dinner, Mae drew pictures of space, and she even made her own astronaut costume out of old orange curtains and cardboard boxes. Later, she asked her dad, "But how do I become an astronaut? It seems impossible." "You will find your way, Mae, because if you dream it, believe in it, and work hard for it, anything is possible." But space is so, so, so far away. It's closer than you think, little May, and you may get there sooner than you think. That night, May had a happy dream. She was dancing in space, surrounded by billions of sparkling stars. Below her, she could see Earth floating and turning like a shining crystal ball. The next morning, May told her parents about her dream. She wanted to tell everyone, and every time she talked about it, her eyes would light up. In the classroom, Miss Bell told everyone to stand in a line on the rug. Today, we are all going to share our dreams about the future. What do you want to be, and what do you want to do when you grow up? Who wants to go first? I want to be a firefighter. I want to be a teacher. Football player. I want to be a mom. I want to go to space. I want to be an astronaut. All the kids started laughing. Miss Bell asked, May, are you sure you don't want to be a nurse? Nursing would be a good profession for someone like you. I don't want to be a nurse. I want to be an astronaut. May felt very disappointed. On her way home from school, May was quiet. She looked out the car window. Her world turned blue and cold. Nothing was the way it used to be. At home, May started crying. Miss Bell said I can't become an astronaut. What a silly thing to say, said her mother. She told me I should be a nurse instead, said May. Her mom wiped away her tears. My dear May, I hope you didn't believe her. Of course I believed her. She's my teacher. I'm sorry Miss Bell didn't encourage you, but she can't stop you. No one can stop you. Follow your dream, May, and go to space. Thank you, Mom. I promise when I get to space, I will wave to you and Dad from the spaceship. Her mom took her hand and they started dancing. You must always repeat to yourself, if I can dream it, if I can believe in it, and if I work hard for it, anything is possible. May went on dreaming, believing, and working really hard. And guess what? She went to space and waved to her mom and dad on Earth.
Good morning. I'm Roma Taunton, a new member of All Souls Board of Trustees. I've belonged to All Souls for 45 years. I first saw All Souls on a tour of the city when I was looking for a job. I was excited to see the sign because I had been church shopping in Atlanta and decided that a UU community would be a good fit for me. All Souls has given me a sense of stability, stimulation, and support as I move through several career phases, marriage, retirement, and the death of my husband. Over the years, I was part of the early Moore Square core team. I facilitated our adoption of Carver Elementary School and coordinated our Carver volunteers for the first 6 years. I've been blessed to sing in the choir for more than 20 years. Being part of All Souls is a significant factor in my decision to remain in Kansas City. My job right now is to invite you to participate in the offering. Today, those funds go to the operational budget. I have a message from the Board of Trustees. All of us are so thankful for the strong support you provide by maintaining your pledges. This is a hard time. We understand the sacrifices that many of you make to meet your pledge. And for our members who are struggling with reduced resources, We greatly appreciate the support you can give to All Souls in any way. Together, we are making it work. We miss our building, yet someone is there every day taking care of business and helping people that need to get in. The Hunger Outreach team prepares food there 3 times a week. We drive through for Sunday Plus lunch. It's still our home, and as such, requires heat and care. Our staff are fantastic and work hard to facilitate our communication and activities. We have many opportunities to interact online. Thanks to Kendyl, Anthony, the readers, and others who do special things, our Sunday services get better and better. We have wonderful music from our section leaders, and Anthony finds other sources to enrich our services. We have great technical support for anything we want to try. The offering will now be given and received in grateful appreciation of our shared hopes and values. Thank you.
let's say together the words of dedication for our offering. We dedicate our offerings and our actions to the mission at the heart of this congregation, to build a respectful, caring community, to inspire personal and spiritual growth, and to create change toward a just and compassionate society.
From Reverence, Renewing a Forgotten Virtue by Paul Woodruff. Ceremonious behavior is a sign of reverence. It also shows respect for other people, a kind of respect that can only flow from reverence. Reverence is a shared devotion to high ideals. A good army, for example, serves no single human master, but rather a principle of order and discipline that holds power and violence firmly in the service of the common good. Respect, the respect that flows from reverence, requires that we recognize each other's devotion to these ideals. Without respect, there is no hope of good opinion rising over personal differences, and there are always personal differences. The respect that is shown in ceremony cannot be based on good opinion of the other people involved, because we may not know them well enough to form good opinions, and because, in any case, such opinions are secondary to our larger shared purpose. I do not have to like you or approve of you in order to show respect for you with sincerity. A good team is a system for preventing and correcting for individual error at all levels of command. Teamwork of this kind would be destroyed by overconfidence from any point in the hierarchy. Overconfidence ruptures teamwork. And overconfidence, as the Greek poets taught us, is a failure of reverence, a failure that leads often to bad judgment. An act of respect says that none of us is all-powerful or immortal, that no one can play God and get away with it. We will all die, we will all make mistakes. We all together seek to maintain an orderly system that is least vulnerable to hubris, to the violence of mind or action that comes from forgetting our common human limitations. An act of respect represents the thought that I cannot get away with treating you like dirt, no matter how powerful I am. Reverence does not allow me to overlook our common humanity and, in the case of hierarchy, our devotion to common ideals.
From the second inaugural address by Franklin Roosevelt, January 20th, 1937. But here is the challenge to our democracy. In this nation, I see tens of millions of its citizens, a substantial part of its whole population, who are at this very moment denied the greater part of what the very lowest standards of today call the necessities of life. I see millions of families trying to live on income so meager that the pall of family disaster hangs over them day by day. I see millions whose daily lives in city and on farm continue under conditions labeled indecent by so-called polite society half a century ago. I see millions denied education, recreation, and the opportunity to better their lot and the lot of their children. I see millions lacking the means to buy products of farm and factory and by their poverty, denying work and productiveness to many other millions. I see 1/3 of a nation ill-housed, ill-clad, ill-nourished. But it is not in despair that I paint you that picture. I paint it for you in hope, because the nation, seeing and understanding the injustice in it, proposes to paint it out. The test of our progress is not whether we add more to the abundance of those who have much. It is whether we provide enough for those who have too little. Government is competent when all who compose it work as trustees for the whole people. It can make constant progress when it keeps abreast of all the facts. It can obtain justified support and legitimate criticism when the people receive true information of all that government does. Today, we reconsecrate our country to long-cherished ideals in a suddenly changed civilization. In every land, there are always at work forces that drive people apart and forces that draw people together. In our personal ambitions, we are individualists. But in our seeking for economic and political progress as a nation, we all go up, or else we all go down, as one people. To maintain a democracy of effort requires a vast amount of patience in dealing with differing methods, a vast amount of humility. But out of the confusion of many voices rises an understanding of dominant public need. Then political leadership can voice common ideals and aid in their realization.
Freedom is coming, freedom is coming, freedom is coming, oh yes I know. Freedom is coming, freedom is coming, freedom is coming, oh yes I know. Freedom is coming, freedom is coming, freedom is coming, oh yes I know. Freedom is coming, freedom is coming, freedom is coming, oh yes I know. Oh freedom, oh freedom, oh freedom, freedom is coming, oh yes, oh freedom, oh freedom, oh freedom, freedom is coming, oh yes I know, 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 oh yes, oh justice, oh justice, oh justice, justice is coming, oh yes, oh justice, oh justice, oh justice, justice is coming, oh yes I know, 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 oh yes, oh freedom, oh freedom, oh freedom, freedom is coming, oh yes, freedom is coming, freedom is coming, freedom is coming, oh yes I know, 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 oh yes I know.
I have always liked Senator Amy Klobuchar from back when I lived in Minnesota. She is my new hero. And I now have one grudging point of respect for our own Roy Blunt. Together, they were co-chairs of the planning committee for Wednesday's inauguration ceremonies for now President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris. There are a couple of minor nits that I could pick, but as a whole, I found the event graceful, moving, and meaningful, a nearly flawless example of what I called a month ago curated reverence. I invite you to spend a few moments with me this morning reflecting on that event, not only to prolong the sheer enjoyment of a shared experience so long anticipated, so welcome, and so well executed, and not only to consider its implications for the duties now incumbent upon the new administration and all of us as Americans, but also to better understand the spiritual resonances that it evoked and how it touched the springs of reverence that are essential for authentic citizenship and leadership. Many observers of human psychological functioning believe that both our national and global cultures are suffering from ongoing trauma, acute in the case of COVID-19 pandemic with its massive fatalities, and chronic in the case of worldwide climate change, and specific to American progressives in the case of the Trump administration. Although the recent insurrection mob attack on the Capitol was traumatic for all citizens, even those who rejoiced in it. In a situation of trauma, higher order brain functions, such as problem solving, planning, self-awareness, and decision-making, shut down in order to allow instinct and muscle memory to focus on preserving life. The first step in healing trauma is to come to a renewed sense of safety. The second is to be able to name the trauma, tell the truth about it, and grieve the losses that were part of it. The third is to integrate the traumatic event into one's personal and collective story so that it has enduring meaning and can be remembered without being relived. The final stage of trauma recovery is to share one's own wisdom and resources in helping others to recover from similar experiences. It seems to me that Wednesday's celebrations helped to initiate the first two steps in our national healing from the trauma of the past 4 years, and that is part of why they felt so particularly moving and liberating. They demonstrated the dependability of long-standing structures of government and society, the orderly transition of power in which we all as citizens are safe, a very important and intentional contrast to the events of January 6th. The new administration showcased Joe Biden and Kamala Harris as calm and self-controlled leaders, compliant with the constraints of traditions larger than themselves. Both the COVID memorial lights along the reflecting pool on Tuesday evening and the wreath ceremony at Arlington Cemetery named our collective losses and acknowledged our shared grief. It is far from complete, but the work of healing was begun in what appeared to be competent hands. The cumulative impact of the day was impressive in part because of the difficulties that its organizers had to overcome. And yet, in part, those very challenges also served to lend it an uncommon public awareness and significance. There can be no bickering about the size of crowds. There were no crowds to speak of, only lines of National Guard security forces, which set a certain tone of seriousness. All such ceremonies are examples of what one of my colleagues calls high play. Yet these rituals were anything but playful. Something essential was at stake, and these oaths were not pro forma. As the new president memorably affirmed, "My whole soul is in it." The Bibles used were significant not so much for their contents as for their provenance. Joe Biden's inherited Bible has been in his family since 1893. It records all of his swearings in starting in 1973, as well as his son Beau's oath as Attorney General of Delaware and eventual death. Kamala Harris's husband Doug held two Bibles on which she swore her oath, one once belonging to Supreme Court Justice Thurgood Marshall, and one used throughout her life by the Vice President's spiritual mentor and friend. The absence of cheering crowds and throngs of dignitaries was an artifact not only of pandemic precautions against virus transmission, but also of security to prevent a recurrence of the recent violence at the Capitol. Together, these restrictions turned the inauguration into a more nearly virtual event to which the entire country had a front seat. This feature helped to deal with another challenge, which was to turn national attention from the former president to the new one without trying to compete with 45's enthusiasm for large public spectacle. Grandpa Joe, as some have called him, is no charismatic or romantic hero, and we have had enough of hero worship for a while. Dignity, integrity, competence, and restraint were the virtues of the day, and the contrast was refreshing. It feels necessary that the inauguration truly began on Tuesday evening with the illumination at the reflecting pool, 400 lights shining into the somber dusk and the still water, each representing 1,000 American lives lost to the coronavirus pandemic. An acknowledgement of mortality and sorrow beyond our control, and acceptance of responsibility for all that we must do now, which will be the foundation of any healing. Then in the morning, there was Officer Eugene Goodman, now acting Deputy House Sergeant at Arms, who resourcefully and bravely led an insurrectionist mob away from the unsecured Senate chamber on January 6th, now escorting Kamala Harris up the steps of the Capitol to take the oath of Vice President. There was Bernie Sanders, being unmistakably Bernie in his Vermont mittens, reminding us prosaically that for all its elegance, this pageant unfolded in the January cold. His solitary presence a token not only of pandemic protocol, but also of an erstwhile opposition that will continue to expect of this new administration something of more substance than expedient compromise. Suggesting also, for those with eyes to see, that a flinty white Yankee parka and mittens evokes a different popular response than would a person of color who chose not to dress formally for such an occasion. There were the babies being carried and danced with, arriving and departing in response to their own baby needs, reminding us of both the bonds of family and our own profound responsibilities to future generations. There was the expected extravagance of Lady Gaga, with her billowing red silk skirt, which on anyone else would have been over the top, but for her persona expressed both exuberance and restraint. And if you weren't looking for over the top, why invite Lady Gaga in the first place? And with her peace dove brooch, which rather than another flag image, offered its own new dimension to the national anthem. I am given to understand that her rendition of the Star-Spangled Banner was musically creative. Whether it was that or the circumstances, I just know that for the first time, I heard what so proudly we hailed, not as a besieged fort of 1812, but as the institutions of democracy itself. And the query, Does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave, not as a rhetorical boast of victory, but as an honest and urgent question for a wounded nation? There was the radiant young Black woman poet, to whose words we shall return presently, offering in crystalline language the hope of America not as failed, but as unfinished. There was the departure with something approaching dignity and personal good manners of Mike and Karen Pence, stand-ins for the already absent former president, a crumb of human mutuality, which I found a bit redemptive and moving. There was Landscape with Rainbow, a painting from the Smithsonian American Art Museum by Robert Duncanson, a free Black grandson of slaves, illustrating the ideal of a peaceful America in 1859 on the eve of the Civil War, selected at the suggestion of Dr. Jill Biden. Ordinarily, this loan of a classic national art treasure would have served as the backdrop for the Senate inaugural luncheon. In place of that normally private event, there was a broadcast presentation of gifts to the new president and vice president in the rotunda, including a pair of massive engraved Lenox crystal vases, some quickly developed and framed photographs of the event, and the flags that were flying over the Capitol at the time of their swearing in. This quaint exchange of courtesies, which the public does not normally witness, affirms the intentional recognition of the new chief executive and commander-in-chief, as well as the new presiding officer of the Senate, by the members of Congress. Again this year, that acknowledgement was not a taken for granted formality, but a resonant act of yielding assent to the authority of a new administration. There was a motorcade through quiet streets to the Tomb of the Unknown at Arlington Cemetery, with its vista overlooking the city of Washington, D.C. There were the 3 other former presidents and their wives, with Hillary Clinton notable among them, a wall of gravitas and goodwill at Joe Biden's back, radiating from different parties and eras, a unified respect for the office and its traditions. There was the all but wordless dedication of the wreath, acknowledging that without the sacrifices of that unknown soldier and the hundreds of thousands that surround him in that place and elsewhere, there would be no Oval Office, no chambers of Congress, no peaceful transition of power, no America with the continuing potential to make good on its founding promises. It was the first act of a commander-in-chief who must authorize placing American lives in harm's way, to remember with solemn reverence those already fallen in service to their country. How else could one begin to undertake such a weight of responsibility? From that high perspective, the day became both more businesslike and more festive. There was, in place of the traditional parade, a short but visible walk down Pennsylvania Avenue, again lined only with camouflage-clad National Guard and members of the press, with each of the new executives preceded by college drumlines and accompanied by their extended families. There were the doors of a White House that we all knew had been readied with efficiently frantic haste by a well-orchestrated crew for its new occupants, and the doors to the Eisenhower Executive Office Building, where Kamala Harris had declared that she was ready to get to work. It was reassuring to be confident that, contrary to several currently circulating political cartoons, Joe Biden would not confront a literally trashed Oval Office, but rather a stack of symbolic day one executive orders to sign, undoing the worst excesses of the previous regime. And curiously, given all else, a generous personal letter from his predecessor, which has become a White House tradition since the first George Bush found a note from his departing boss, Ronald Reagan, on his desk. Later in the evening, in lieu of the usual raft of inaugural balls, there would be a televised celebrity festivity, concluding with a spectacular, even on television, multi-location fireworks display featuring 20,000 individual explosions in a little over 4 minutes. According to reports, the security shutdown of the National Mall allowed the show's designers unprecedented use of the Washington Monument grounds for setting up the fireworks. It felt like the one moment of unrestrained triumph as the cameras imposed the watching faces of the Bidens on the White House balcony and Harris and Emhoff on the monument steps over the fountains of falling light. This was refreshingly orchestrated not to patriotic marches, but to Katy Perry singing her hit Firework, including the words, "If you only knew what the future holds. After a hurricane comes a rainbow." Maybe a reason why all the doors were closed was you could open one that leads you to the perfect road. Like a lightning bolt, your heart will glow, and when it's time, you'll know. You just gotta ignite the light and let it shine. Just own the night, like the 4th of July. And they did, and we did, and the nation rejoiced. And the trauma became a tiny bit more manageable, and healing a little bit more possible. And that, my friends, is the point. Could it have been better? In one or two ways, yes. It is well past time that any such national event of celebration simply must include an explicit acknowledgement of Native Americans and the impact of white supremacy upon their communities. The absence of that recognition makes a song like "This Land Is Your Land," sung by people of European descent to each other, particularly uncomfortable to hear. There was also, despite Kamala Harris's partly Hindu heritage, no inclusion of religious diversity outside the monotheistic Abrahamic faiths, leaving millions of American Buddhists, pagans, Hindus, humanists, and followers of other non-Western traditions rendered invisible. It is, as usual, difficult to discern whether this exclusion is meditated or oblivious, but neither option reflects well upon the planners. And either way, it encourages religious supremacism and the argument that America ought to be a Christian nation. I will say that while I first considered Donald Trump's determination to leave Washington while he could still do so on Air Force One and not attend Biden's inauguration to be childish and petulant, but I now consider it to have been a huge relief and a fortunate absence. I cannot believe that his presence would have been gracious, and it would have been a distraction from the necessary focus on the new president. So I think he did us all an unintentional favor, for which I find myself grateful. Assuming that by 4 years from now we have overcome the pandemic and are secure in our ability to protect our leaders in public places, I think I will be glad once again to hear the streets of DC filled with cheers for another inauguration. You can certainly play a football game in an empty stadium, but the experience lacks a certain collective energy. This odd set of historical circumstances brought us all into the televised moment, up close and personal in an unprecedented way, and I hope we get to keep some of that proximity. but I will rejoice to see the applauding crowds again as well. Of course, the most stunning element of the whole day was a reading by the Youth Poet Laureate, 22-year-old Amanda Gorman, whose poem, The Hill We Climb, offered a redemptive vision of America through the eyes of Black experience, a unique trauma, which is perhaps just now beginning to be integrated into the shared story of this nation. If that is remotely true, then the possibility of healing a deeper wound than any insult Donald Trump ever dealt our common good might be dawning. Let me close by reminding you of what, in part, she said. We've braved the belly of the beast. We've learned that quiet isn't always peace, and the norms and notions of what just isn't always justice. Somehow we've weathered and witnessed a nation that isn't broken but simply unfinished. And yes, we are far from polished, far from pristine, but that doesn't mean we are striving to form a union that is perfect. We are striving to forge a nation with a purpose, to compose a country committed to all cultures, colors, characters, and conditions. And so we lift our gazes not to what stands between us, but what stands before us. We close the divide because we know to put our future first, we must first put our differences aside. We lay down our arms so we can reach out our arms to one another. We seek harm to none and harmony for all. Let the globe, if nothing else, say this is true, that even as we grieved, we grew, that even as we hurt, we hoped, that even as we tired, we tried, and that we'll be forever tied together, victorious, not because we will never again know defeat, but because we will never again sow division. It's because being American is more than a pride we inherit. It's the past we step into and how we repair it. We've seen a force that would shatter our nation rather than share it, would destroy our country if it meant delaying democracy, and this effort very nearly succeeded. But while democracy can be periodically delayed, it can never be permanently defeated. In this truth, in this faith, we trust. For while we have our eyes on the future, history has its eyes on us. We will not march back to what was, but move to what shall be. A country that is bruised but whole, benevolent but bold, fierce and free. We will not be turned around or interrupted by intimidation, because we know our inaction and inertia will be the inheritance of the next generation. Our blunders become their burdens. But one thing is certain. If we merge mercy with might and might with right, then love becomes our legacy to change our children's birthright. So let us leave behind a country better than the one that we were left with. There is always a light, if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it. So it must and shall be. Let's lift our voices and our hopes for this country and its new leaders together in song.
Yes.
Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land where I'm bound. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land where I'm bound. We'll all that land. Don't you wanna go to that land? Don't you wanna go to that land where I'm found, where I'm found? Don't you wanna go to that land? Oh, don't you wanna go to that land? Don't you wanna go to that land where I'm found? Don't you wanna go to that land where I'm bound?
Let the globe, if nothing else, say this is true, that even as we grieved, we grew, that even as we hurt, we hoped, that even as we tired, we tried, and that we'll be forever tied together, victorious, not because we will never again know defeat, but because we will never again sow division. There is always a light, if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it.
Oh, beautiful for heroes who in liberating strife, who more themselves their country love, and mercy more than life. America, America, may God thy gold revive, till all success be nobleness and every gain divine.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fires of commitment. For all these we carry in our minds and hearts, until the time shall come when we will be together again. Thank you for being part of our gathering this morning. We hope that it has uplifted your spirit and inspired you. We also hope you will now join us for a time of informal conversation on Zoom, which you can reach through the link in the chat or on our All Souls website homepage. Don't forget to send in your reservations for our upcoming Sunday Plus meal on February 7th, and plan to join us next week when our good friend Reverend Jill Jarvis will invite us to consider Groundhog Day again. In the meantime, please, everyone, take care, stay safe, and be well this week.